This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Monday, December 28th. This is Africa 54. Due to the global outbreak of COVID-19, Voice of America is taking every necessary precaution to safeguard its employees. So our broadcast will look a little different today and in the near future as we, out of an abundance of caution, reduce our staffing at VOA headquarters here in Washington. We're working to help keep you informed about what's going on, and we appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. Election officials are counting the ballots in Niger on Monday following Sunday's presidential election that is expected to result in the West African nation's first transfer of power between two democratically elected presidents. Dibrsyo reports.
Niger has experienced 4 coups since gaining independence from France in 1960, and a smooth transfer of power would be considered a rare bright spot for a country blighted by widespread poverty and militant violence. President Mamadou Issoufou is stepping down after 2 5-year terms and described Sunday as a special day that he hoped would solidify Niger's reputation as a democratic country in Africa and the world. His departure stands in sharp contrast with Ivory Coast and Guinea, whose presidents this year used constitutional changes to extend their tenures to 3 terms, raising fears of a democratic backslide in West Africa. Former Nigerian Interior Minister Mohamed Bazoum is the ruling party's candidate. If, as predicted, he succeeds Issoufou, then he'll inherit significant challenges. Amid escalating violence in the Sahel, Niger has suffered repeated attacks from militants linked to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State. More than 40% of its population lives in extreme poverty, and global lockdowns have slowed growth, compounding the effects of climate change and low prices for uranium, Niger's top export.
That was Dibrsyo of Reuters reporting. Ugandan presidential candidate Bobi Wine says security forces are stopping him from campaigning, often with tear gas and rubber bullets. Ugandan police say they are enforcing COVID-19 guidelines, but Wine says he fears for his life and has taken to wearing a bulletproof vest. Halima Thumani reports from his campaign event in Barara.
Singer turned politician Robert Kyagulanyi, better known as Bobi Wine, has seen his campaign almost turned into a battlefield with gunshots, heavy use of tear gas and beating of his supporters by police. Now, Wine wears a bulletproof vest, saying that after 3 attempts on his life, it is clear the regime wants to kill him.
A grenade was thrown to me in Kayunga. Our car was shot at, all tires flattened, and another shot came through the windscreen. And just 2 days ago, again, our car was shot at by the police.
Police and military officials said they are enforcing standard operating procedures to protect the public from COVID-19 that Wine has failed to observe. Brigadier Flavia Biekwaso, the Uganda People's Defense spokesperson, says Wine does not understand the pandemic has gone beyond controllable levels.
The security forces are not sabotaging Kyagulanyi. They are only implementing the SOPs to make sure that we do not have this pandemic of COVID-19 spreading to the population beyond the capacity that we can manage.
But Wine accuses Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni of having double standards since he too has been holding rallies with large crowds. Wine says he has no control over who comes to see him.
Every time I show up for a campaign meeting, droves and droves of people show up to show solidarity to us. These people lying on the sides of the road, we don't have control over them. And all I do is stand on my car and wave to them. Now that has been termed a crime.
On the campaign trail, Wine has about 12 police pickup trucks trailing him. He says the presence of the security teams causes delays and cuts him off from supporters. Wine has met with Uganda's Electoral Commission asking for the security forces to be withdrawn, but the military says its deployment is backed by law.
It says where the police feels that they are going to be overwhelmed, they'll always come for the military for support. So we are doing this within the ambits of law. We are doing this because the police cannot adequately dominate the entire country at the same time.
Ugandans head to the polls January 14th to elect the next president. Halima Athmani for VOA News, Mbarara, Uganda.
Reports of rebel violence increased in the run-up to the Central African Republic election on Sunday, raising fears that a substantial part of the population may not be able to vote. Here again is David Doyle with the details.
People in Central African Republic voted on Sunday under a cloud of violence as the government, international partners and the United Nations tried to hold off a rebel advance. Militias hostile to President Faustin Archange Touadera have stepped up attacks in the run-up to the presidential and legislative election. That's after several candidates, including former President Francois Bozize, were barred from standing earlier this month. Touadera and the UN, which has 12,800 uniformed peacekeepers in the impoverished but mineral-rich country, have accused Bozize of being behind the rebel offensive. And there are concerns that a substantial number of Central African Republic's 1.8 million registered voters will be disenfranchised by the violence, specifically in remote towns, some of which are controlled by armed rebels. Some polling stations in the capital Bangui opened with a slight delay amid heavy security following sporadic gunfire heard overnight. Heavy gunfire was also heard early on Sunday in the town of Boa, around 270 miles northwest of the capital, according to one resident. Opposition figures had called for Sunday's vote to be delayed, but this was rejected by the government and the UN amid fears a power vacuum could worsen the crisis.
Reuters' David Doyle with that report. Sudan is hosting more than 50,000 refugees who fled the fighting in Ethiopia's Tigray region, despite the Ethiopian government's announcement that the fighting in Tigray is over. Many of the refugees say it is not safe enough to go home. Naba Muhyiddin reports from Hashaba refugee camp in Sudan.
Over 50,000 Ethiopians have arrived in eastern Sudan since early November, fleeing the conflict between the Ethiopian government and regional forces in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region. Sudanese authorities have placed the refugees in 2 camps and are planning to build more. Many international and local organizations have assisted the refugees with basic needs like food and water. Some of the refugees have stayed in the border villages of Hashaba and Hamdayet, living with relatives or Sudanese families. Sudanese authorities want to send all the refugees to Rakuba camp, where they say it's safer since it's far from the border.
Refugees feel safe and prefer to stay here, but from a security point of view, this area is very close to the border. But the Sudanese government will not allow them to stay in the border area because it is tense.
Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has said the fighting in Tigray is over and that the refugees can return home. But camp residents say it's too soon.
I would only go back home if it's safe and secured. But as long as it's not safe yet, I will stay with my children in Sudan.
Ilul Gabriot and his family also don't plan to return and say the war is not over yet.
We will not go back soon. We called our families and they said the killing targeting Tigrayan people is still in the happening. We will not go back until, if Abiy Ahmed is ousted and the peace is made, we can return back. But as long as he is in charge, we will not go back.
This refugee who fled the town of Humera with his 2 daughters says he still supports the Tigrayan party that the Ethiopian army ousted from power.
If Abiy Ahmed continues in the role, we will not go back to Ethiopia at all. We have a Tigrayan government that came with elections. He is not our government.
On a related issue, Sudan and Ethiopia established formal talks this week to begin demarcation of disputed borderlands, including those that border the Tigray region. Naba Muhyiddin for VOA News, Hashaba Refugees Camp, Al-Qatarif, Sudan.
A girls' education rights group, the Malala Fund, says the majority of Nigeria's out-of-school children during the pandemic are girls and that the gap with boys is widening. Ifyoketang reports from Jos, Nigeria.
This has been a daily chore of 13-year-old Joy Pam since the pandemic forced schools to close down in March. Even though schools have reopened now, she still has to continue with her chores at home, even though her classmates are back in school.
When I see them going to school, tears will start dropping out from my eyes. I wish my parents could get the money and pay my school fees to go back to school because I want to go back to school and study.
Malala Fund, an education rights group for girls, says Nigeria has more girls who are out of school than boys, especially in the north.
Before the COVID pandemic, Nigeria had 13.2 million children out of school. Over 50% of that number are girls. Once the pandemic hit, up to way more than that, about 36 million children were out of school.
Education officials say girls face more obstacles accessing education.
Assistance should be given to the children, particularly also the girl child. We have had radio and television broadcasts. We have produced some hard copy materials which have delivered to the children at home.
According to Malala Fund research, during the lockdown, many girls face challenges accessing distance learning options provided by the government.
Girls are in rural areas. A lot of them did not have access to television or radio because they don't have electricity. There are also cultural and social norm factors where these girls are not able to have access to data. So in a typical family, the girl may have to ask a parent or her spouse to use a smartphone where she could have accessed some of these materials. And depending on if they were granted permission, they were able to access these alternative learning options.
Girls also spend more time doing household chores during the lockdown, according to Malala Fund.
We saw from data, and data we collected directly from children with consent from their parents, that a lot of girls got more hours to do house chores, while boys got plenty hours to play. So what this also means is the girls had less hours to study and prepare for school reopening.
The Universal Basic Education Act of 2004 offers free education for every Nigerian child, from primary to junior secondary school. But Hamzat Lawal notes there are hidden fees that many poor families can't afford.
Our campaign is saying remove hidden fee, amend the Universal Basic Education Act, and ensure compulsorily that girls and boys, particularly girls, go to school and access free 12-year education.
The state's Universal Basic Education Board is calling on development partners to help fund education for children in rural communities. Ifyok Etang for VOA News, Jos, Nigeria.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, concerns over a holiday surge of COVID-19 as many Americans travel to join family despite public health warnings. Stay with us.
Being part of Our Voices is about more than just sitting here and talking about women's issues. It's about listening to them.
And bringing their opinions to the table and making sure their voices are heard.
Because our lived experiences, our stories, and our voices will help shape the next generation.
Hello, welcome to Straight Talk Africa, live from the Voice of America headquarters here in Washington. I am Shaka Sali. Straight Talk Africa, we call it like it is. We discuss issues that reflect the interests of our audience without fear or favor. We are guided by facts, and I look at myself as a servant of nothing but the truth.
Welcome back to Africa 54. U.S. health officials are worried about a holiday surge of COVID-19 cases as vaccination efforts continue. Michelle Quinn has our report.
Nearly 7 million people in the U.S. traveled by air in the week leading up to Christmas Day, down more than 70% from the prior year, but still the highest number since the pandemic began. Public health officials are worried that many people in the U.S. will give up in their efforts to fight the spread of the coronavirus, which causes the COVID-19 disease.
The important thing for people to understand is that even if you traveled, it doesn't mean you just throw your hands up in the air and say, oh, well. There are measures that you can take.
Among those measures, getting tested soon after traveling, says experts. The U.S. is requiring a negative coronavirus test for any travelers coming from Britain, where a more contagious mutation has been spreading. Such efforts are part of a multi-pronged campaign to stop the infection, health officials say.
Here's what the American people most need to know. Mitigation works. The science shows that it works.
A surge of cases in California and Arizona is offsetting some of the progress made in other parts of the nation to reduce new cases. Meanwhile, officials are getting vaccinated against the virus publicly, in part to send a message that the shots are safe and effective.
And then we need to engage with trusted influencers. We need to make sure our pastors and imams and rabbis, all of whom I'm working with, have the facts so that they can spread it to their congregants.
Normally, this is a time of year for people to come together, but because of the virus, this is a season of great concern and hope. Michelle Quinn, VOA News.
The coronavirus pandemic has dominated the news this year, and it's no different this holiday season. Despite public health warnings not to travel, many Americans boarded planes to celebrate Christmas with loved ones. Meanwhile, Europe is receiving its first shipments of a vaccine against the virus and the disease it causes, COVID-19. VOA's Caroline Presutti has our update.
Precious cargo arriving in many countries, carrying hope as the world delivers its first shot to end the pandemic.
At this moment, trucks with the first vaccines are on the road all over Europe, all over Germany. This vaccine is the crucial key for defeating the pandemic. It's the key for us getting back our lives.
But a new COVID-19 variant thought to be more contagious but no more severe surfaced in Britain. Now it has spread to other countries, including Spain.
Don't forget that the cases detected of the British strain came through the Madrid airport. Sometimes you have to remember that we have been stressing the importance of controlling the airport for the last 6 months.
It's the airport that worries American officials too. In the week leading up to Christmas, more than 1 million passengers flew daily, despite warnings from medical officials who fear another spike in cases.
Apprehensive, pretty apprehensive. So we're masks on, everybody stay together. So yeah, so we'll see how it goes. I don't know, with the new strains coming out, I don't know if this is the smartest idea.
The virus continues its march into new areas, forcing resourcefulness to reach those in need. In Thailand, officials set up a field hospital with 30 beds inside a shrimp market. Doctors hope to reach migrant workers who live isolated in areas surrounding the market. As for the economy, a global survey by the consulting firm McKinsey shows 2 out of 3 executives think their country's economies will improve in the next 6 months. Caroline Presutti, VOA News, Washington.
Britain and the European Union finally agreed to a free trade deal Thursday, just days before the Brexit transition period comes to an end. As Henry Ridgwell reports, the deal is yet to be ratified, and there could be more surprises ahead.
4.5 years, 3 prime ministers, and 2 general elections after its 2016 referendum to leave the EU, Britain's exit was finalised Thursday. The 2 sides agreed on a deal covering over $900 billion worth of trade. Following the agreement, both sides claimed victory.
There will be a giant free trade zone of which we will at once be a member and at the same time be able to do our own free trade deals as one UK.
From a position of strength, we were able to come forward with the most comprehensive agreement we've ever had. This agreement will write history.
The text of the deal runs to over 2,000 pages, and there will likely be further debate as details emerge in the coming days. It ensures there will be zero tariffs on goods, but Britain is still leaving the EU's single market and customs union.
This trade deal makes trade harder. Trade will become slower and more expensive between the UK and the EU, and that in turn will have economic implications. But yes, it was a victory speech. Boris Johnson was elected Prime Minister to get Brexit done. He has now definitively got Brexit done.
In London, a city under strict coronavirus lockdown, a feeling of relief.
I think we've had a terrible year, and I think it's really good news.
Well, it's better than a no deal, but still all of the disadvantages of leaving the European Union. So it's making the best of a bad job.
For weeks, the issue of fishing rights had snagged the trade talks. The deal means European fishing fleets will have to give up 25% of their current catch quota over the next 5 years. Britain's Parliament is expected to quickly approve the agreement when it meets on December 30th. But in Brussels, EU lawmakers say they intend to scrutinise the deal carefully and won't be rushed into ratification. So there could still be hurdles ahead. Britain's vote to leave Europe consumed years of bitter political debate and continues to divide the country. A battle not just of politics and money, but of identity and values. The government's own forecast suggests Brexit will cost Britain 2% of GDP next year alone. But Johnson says Britain will prosper mightily outside the EU. That will be put to the test starting January 1st. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
Here is an installment of VOA Leaders, our exclusive reporting project that honors ordinary people doing extraordinary things to help one another during the coronavirus crisis. These are stories about everyday people who have shown leadership in their communities. Michael Munene is a businessman and a landlord in Kenya. He has seen his community struggling through the pandemic and has found a helpful way to support his tenants during this difficult time. Here is his story.
Since I was young, it has been my nature to help those in need, and especially those who are close to me. When we had this coronavirus pandemic, I found it necessary to chip in by letting them not to pay rent for 3 months. What they are supposed to use for the payment or use of the rent, I told them to use for the buying food and to care for their family.
With my business, so the number of customers that I get in a day have reduced to almost to 20%. So, and this is the effect caused by the coronavirus. But I'm so grateful for being waived the 3 months rent. So with this, with the little that I get, I'll be in a position of buying food and catering for the electricity cost.
Even me, I felt touched because I thought it's something just small that I did. But to them, they took it as a very big thing that meant a lot in their life and their families. And they find that they are part of me. And they take me as the head of their family. So they take me as their father.
He has enhanced my sense of belonging because I have come to understand that we really need to live well as friends and to take care of each other, and more so to be empathetic to one another, especially in time like this.
The little I find I have done is not enough. There are other needs that need to be addressed.
While here, we'll stay with different kind of people who work in different sectors. Some work in the horticulture, which for now isn't really working. Some work in schools, and some of us work in private sectors. Some of us for now are on compulsory leave, and the others on unpaid leave, which is a bit hard because we have families, some of us, and we have to provide for them.
As role models in my life, but the three of them are most important. My mom, we are 10 of us in the family, and there is no one time we have ever gone hungry. And also he had used to discipline us, and he used to tell us it's good in life to care and for the others. Secondly, there is my brother, James Boirori. My parents were not in a position to educate me. He took that as his personal responsibility, and he educated me. Thirdly is the Deputy President, William Ruto. He started from scratches to where he is right now. He has taught me that everything is possible. And if after 3 months and things start to go from bad to worse, even me economically am affected, will I be able to continue to provide them with the basic food? The happiest moment in my life, after I say that I'm going to waive them not to pay for rent for 3 months, during this time that everybody's been faced by hardship of COVID-19, is when I found that nowadays they are very jovial. They appear not to have problems. They feel very proud, and they now start to have the ownership of the plot of the premises.
Be sure to stay with Africa 54. We'll have another VOA Leadership Project report honoring people doing extraordinary things in the very near future. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, we thank you for watching.